Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's presentation as part of the I&O Travel and Wellness Program. Today, we have Shannon Truax with us once again, from one nurse to another, talking about the I&O status of a nurse and how to optimize your fluid ratio. A couple of housekeeping items before we begin. Please type any questions or comments you have into the chat box for the presenter, Shannon, and we'll be happy to answer those throughout the presentation. And then also just if you have any questions, use that. If you're on your mobile device, there should be an icon at the top of your screen that you can tap on to get to that chat box. You can also email iahealthcare@iahealthcare.com with any follow-up about today's presentation. So without further ado, I will pass it over to our presenter today, Shannon.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to join you again as we talk today about the I&O status of a nurse. And if any of you are like me, you're probably thinking, yeah, that ratio is pretty off, and I don't even remember the last time I had a sip of water running around in my shift. So we're going to talk about that today, so I'm really excited to talk with you guys because this is actually one of the areas of taking care of health that is one of the biggest struggles for me just because of the fact that I get so busy and then I forget to drink water and there's not water like right in front of my face, so then it gets put on the back burner. So I don't know if any of you guys struggle with this same issue or not, but we're going to talk about it today. All right, so let's get started. So what we're going to talk about in specifics for today is we're going to review some of the previous points that we've made in some of the other presentations real quick, and then we're going to talk about the reasons that we care about I&O. We're also going to talk about what does the I&O status of a nurse even look like. And if you're a nurse and if you actually tally this up and put it on a piece of paper, you might realize, oh, there's some work to do. We're going to talk about why is our fluid ratio so off. And we're going to deal with which fluids help and which fluids hinder in the whole pattern of getting to a hydration status. We're going to also talk about ways to do that during your shift and also hydrating when you're outside of work. So that's going to be what we cover over today. This, of course, is the disclaimer that we have up for legal purposes. You can glance over that. But let's get started. Let's start with what we've talked about, some of the key points from previous episodes. And so one of the things that we always talk about and say is very important is taking care of yourself as a healthcare provider. This is very important, but sometimes not always a priority for us because we're too busy taking care of everybody else. So I just want to remind you guys, you are important too, and taking care of yourself is high priority to me. Going back to the basics is probably the first part of getting yourself in better health. By going back to the basics, we talked about managing your stress because a lot of times our unhealthy habits come out of the stress that we're experiencing. So we talked about how to manage your stress at work and our stress pressure and what that means. And then we also talked about a couple ways to manage your stress through deep breathing, getting outside, and of course the ever favorite, laughter being the best medicine. So that's some of the stuff we've already talked about. And then today we're going to get more into what's actually going into your body as far as fluids and what's coming back out on the other side. So we're going to be discussing the fluid ratio of nurses today. All right, so why do we even care about I&O status in the hospital? Like, if we look back on why we went to nursing school and why we learned the whole fluid status, like what does it mean? So I just want to do a quick review with you guys. When we're checking fluid status on our patients, we're trying to find out, are they even hydrated? Are they dehydrated? Are they in fluid overload? Are they hypovolemic? Like, what's going on with their fluid status? Because we all know every single cell in our body needs H2O. Every single cell needs water, and that's how it functions well. And then, of course, you add in the electrolytes and the different components, blood, whatnot, oxygen. But fluid status has a lot to do with that because the fluid of our body is the way that things are carried and information is carried back and forth. So we kind of need to know what's going on in our freeway system, so to speak. So we also are trying to check out, too, is there a mechanical function that's happening? Is there an obstruction? Is that the reason that they're not urinating very much? Do they have issues with swallowing? Is that why they're not drinking very much water? Is the water ending up in their lungs and they're aspirating? Like, these are the kind of things we need to know. We want to know if their heart's pumping appropriately, if there's too much fluid on board and the heart can't properly do what it needs to do. Also, we want to know about any kind of electrolyte imbalances because we know how important the sodium, the potassium, the magnesium, how those are very important for our heart function and different organ functions. So these are some of the reasons why we care about it in the hospital setting. And this is just a quick review, too, of what a healthy average adult ratio is. And so this is talking about kind of some of the other areas that we may forget about. We always think about, you know, taking fluids in orally or even IV, but we sometimes forget that we do get fluids in through our food. We also have fluids being excreted back and forth between our lungs. When we breathe in and out, there is some kind of moisture loss and breathing that goes with that. Sometimes we don't think about those things. So this is just a quick review of some of the things that we do to make sure that our patients have a healthy average adult ratio. So why do we care about the I&O status of the nurse? And I think this is pretty obvious, that we have concern for what's going on with our bodies for the same reason we have concern for our patients. And although we may not be in the critical state or condition that our patients are, it's still very important for us to have a balance between what we've got going on coming in, what we've got going on going out, and that our bodies are happy and functioning well, and that our electrolytes are in balance with each other, so that we can perform our jobs and better take care of our patients, and then just for being human beings, that we take care of ourselves. So these are some of the qualities that nurses have, and this is some of the reason our ratios get out of balance. We're human. I know sometimes we may feel like we're superheroes or that everyone else is more important than us, and we kind of are, you know, mortars in that sense that we are too busy to take care of everybody to take care of ourselves. But we're human beings too, so our bodies function the same way as our patients, and we need to be mindful of taking care of us as well. We're not machines and we're not robots. We need to have that conscious mindset to take care of ourselves as well. Sometimes we have we pride ourselves on having our nurse bladder, and that it's okay. I don't have to go for a while. I've got my nurse bladder. We also sacrifice the needs for others, and I know that's a huge theme because that's reality what happens a lot of times with our job. We also are sitting there monitoring and measuring our patient's fluid status, and then we fail to pay attention to what's going on with our own bodies. And these are just some of the qualities that gets us out of our ratio. And we're a selfless breed, and so we do this because we do care so much about our patients. We sacrifice our own needs and our own self for them, sometimes without appreciation, but it's because we have those big hearts and we care. So what does a nurse's I&O status actually look like? And these words are probably something that comes to your mind because they come to mind. I mean, we're parched, we're dehydrated, definitely have a subpar optimal ratio. And so if we actually wrote down on some of our shifts, you may have a nurse intake of 0 and a nurse output of 0 because you haven't had even a chance to have a sip of water or run to the restroom. Maybe you haven't even had a chance to eat. And so our ratio can be pretty off. And I know that that seems extreme, but there are shifts where this actually happens, where in 12 hours, you don't even go to the restroom and you don't even have a bite to eat, or maybe you're grabbing some cookies as you run out the door. And some people look at this and say, oh, well, then it's an even ratio, 0 in, 0 out. But that's not optimal either. As we said, every single cell needs hydration, and so it's not optimal to have 0 going in. And then your kidneys aren't able to flush things out with the 0 going out. So it's not ideal. So why do we have this fluid status of the nurse? So let's ask nurses. So I actually asked a couple of nurses of what's going on. Like, how come you think this is that we are in a situation where we don't have the optimal fluid ratio, even though we know better, even though we're trained in it, even though we're constantly monitoring it in our patients? I asked a couple of nurses why it is that they think that we don't have adequate fluid statuses. And you guys can chime in on the chat box and let me know your thoughts as well. But here's a few of what the nurses had said. And these were actually some of my experience too. The number one is too busy. I'm too busy. The doctor's ordering stuff. The patient's asking for things. The administration's coming by asking, did I chart something? The computer's not working. The med room is full. Whatever the reasons are, we are so busy. And so sometimes stopping to, not even stopping and smell the roses, but stopping and sip the water is not even an option. And even sometimes when we're not as busy, maybe we forget. We're in the mode. We're taking care of people. We're talking. We're doing the things that we're doing at work, and we just forget to take a time out and run and grab some water. Also, the other thing that people said was that they were either gloved or gowned up and maybe stuck in an isolation room for a while, and you don't want to contaminate your fluids with your isolation room. So that made things difficult, especially if they had to help out with the procedure or even clean up their patient. You could be in that room for an hour or two trying to just get things done, and so that would be an hour or two where you're not hydrating yourself very well. Not getting breaks, which I know this is an issue throughout hospitals all over the United States, when that's a staffing issue, which is why it's awesome that we have IA and Travel Nurse Company where we can go in and help assist the staffing of a hospital, and we can travel wherever we like to. But that is why we have our jobs, because there is a need because of the short staffing, which, yes, sometimes means we're not getting our breaks. There's no coverage. Some nurses even said that they didn't want to have to go to the bathroom because, again, they're so busy they don't have time to go to the bathroom. Therefore, if they don't drink water, they won't have to go pee, which is not a good mindset to get in, because you shouldn't feel that you're in a position at work where you're so busy you're not even allowed to go to the bathroom. And I know that happens, and definitely we're in go mode, and sometimes our adrenaline helps out, which helps us not need to go to the bathroom because we're so focused on what's going on, but it's not a good thing to have happening. Also, there is a lot of controversy between the rules against food and drink at the nurses' station. So I was chatting with a few nurses who were like, yes, we're not allowed to have any food or drink out by the nurses' station, and our break room is all the way across the entire hospital practically, and so it's not easy just to run in and sip and grab some water or grab a snack, and that I will address that here in a minute. But these are some of the reasons that people said that they were not getting in their fluid hydration while at work. So where is this coming from? This whole we can't have fluids at the nurses' station, and this, where is this happening from? So it's actually an OHSA regulation, and these are the rules, and this is what they're saying about it. It's not JCO, and it's not CMS. This is what OHSA says, and they basically are saying that eating, drinking, smoking, applying cosmetics, and handling contacts is prohibited in an area where there is reasonable likelihood of occupational exposure. So whether that's at the nurse's station or not, apparently OHSA considers that to be a dangerous place to do all of the above. They also say they do not want them to consume food or beverages in a toilet room, which kind of funny if you think about it. I don't know if I've ever in my life thought about going to eat in the restroom. Seems kind of dirty, but they put that in there just in case. Or any area exposed to a toxic material. So I don't know what toxic material is hanging out at the nurse's station other than the MRSA, the VRE, and other things that may come around if you have a sample or something there, or maybe the cleaning products, who knows. But this was their rationale for that whole thing, and this was their situation. So, I talked about before in the stressful situations and getting through things at the hospital, you've got to find the humor in it. And that's exactly what one hospitalist did in his blog. He wrote a huge article about, the restrictions with food and beverages at the desk. And he found a way around it, or at least he's joking about a way around it, which is pretty funny. But he was basically saying, okay, fine. If that's the case, then I'm going to write medication on my coffee cup, and I'm going to walk through the unit drinking my coffee like I normally do. And because it's a HIPAA violation to ask me what's in my cup because it's a medication, therefore you're not allowed to do that, and there's no rules against having medication at the desk, so therefore I can have my coffee. And that sounds like a typical doctor response, right? But he wrote that on his coffee cup and walked around the unit, and I thought that was pretty hilarious that, these rules come up, and sometimes as healthcare providers we roll our eyes or we're like, this is ridiculous. But that was his way of making light of the situation, and I thought that was pretty funny for us to hear about. So when you have to go, you have to go. So we don't want you guys, having issues with your bladder later on. We don't want to be the little old ladies that have the incontinent issues because we're spent our entire career as nurses holding our bladder, and we have that whole nurse bladder. And I know that with the lack of fluid going in and the stress response playing a role, the last thing on your mind might be your bladder because, secondary to your brain and heart functions and the things you need for life-saving stuff, sometimes your bladder and your intestines can be put on the back burner during crisis mode. And if your entire shift is crisis mode, that can happen sometimes. We literally don't want you to be holding it until you're running to the bathroom like someone called the code blue. So make sure you keep that in mind, and definitely don't have to, we joke around sometimes about how we need to insert Foley's on ourselves so we can continue our day, but nobody really wants to do that. So we need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves on this aspect. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. You know, there's a new term or medical terminology comes out all the time for different syndromes, but they call it infrequent voider syndrome, which is essentially nurse bladder. So we've all talked about our nurse bladder, and some of us have really amazing camel nurse bladders, and some of us, maybe you've had kids or different things have happened, and your bladder's not what it used to be. But what this infrequent voider syndrome is that, you know, basically you are not going to the bathroom very often because you're holding it until the tank is so full, and that makes you infrequently void. So we already talked about, some of us think it's a badge of honor. Don't worry, I can hold it, I have a nurse bladder, but we really shouldn't be doing that to ourselves. So some of the side effects of having our hair or bladders could be that when you finally do go to the restroom, you may have what is called hyper-CC's release. Like you guys know that we always are measuring everything, intake, output, everything is milliliters or CC's. And so when you finally do go to the restroom, you may be sitting in there a while because it's a never-ending flow of urine. So that could be something that is a potential side effect. Also, urinary retention, which is a more serious issue that develops over time from holding our bladders. So you have issues where you cannot finish urinating, or you can't go at all. So that's an issue and a concern we definitely want to avoid. We see this in our patients, especially, you know, as they get older, and we don't want to put ourselves on that same path. Incontinence, which that would be not a very fun situation, especially because we deal with that so much in our job, and a lot of people's lives are very affected by this. And always having to have a concern for where's the closest bathroom. We want to make sure we're not setting ourselves up for that, because we do weaken the muscle in our bladder when we sit there and hold it for long periods of time. So we don't want to have issues where we're having to wear adult diapers and stuff in our older age because of our nursing career, right? And UTI is also another possible side effect. We're having those heavily concentrated, you know, dehydrated system going on that sets yourself up for having super concentrated areas of bacteria, and we don't want to have that for us as well. So we have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves as a nurse, because we are important as well. So how do we do this? How do we get the adequate fluid intake and the output and still manage to be able to do our jobs and get everything taken care of? Well, you want to start your day out on the right track. You don't want to begin your day behind. So what I mean by that is there's a lot of beverages that people drink, especially in the morning, especially nurses, whether you're day shift or night shift. There are so many nurses that come in holding their coffee in hand and their Starbucks and whatever else energy source that they have, looking to make it through their 12 hours. So people drink soda, they drink the energy drinks, you know, whatever sugary drinks, hopefully not alcohol, but I know that definitely alcohol is a go-to after work. Even night shift goes out for their breakfast beer. So, but thinking about not beginning your day on the wrong track, if we think about how the body works, and you wake up in the morning and you haven't had any fluid going in overnight while you're sleeping, like our patients do, because we have them on IV fluids. Therefore, we are constantly hydrating them even while they're sleeping, whereas normal human beings, we don't have that. We're not all hooked up to IVs. So at nighttime, you actually put yourself in a small dehydration state, not a big deal, but that's why first thing in the morning, it's important to actually drink some water. Start the system back out. Okay, it's time to go again. Let's put the fluids back in. And so that's why that's important. And when we don't do that, when we first default to maybe some more dehydrating factors and some more fluids that make us go and have that diuretic effect, then we're already behind again, because whatever fluid we did still have on board, we're now trying to release it. So a lot of times people go for sugary drinks, like even their coffees, if they're getting the mocha choco latte, whatever it may be, there's a lot of sugar in there. There's a lot of sugar in soda. There's a lot of sugar in these different, you know, juice drinks. And so you have to be mindful of that, because what sugar actually does is it has this hypernatremic effect. And that means that it draws water from our tissues. We don't want that. Not unless we're super fluid overloaded, and then we want some LASIK fluid like we give our patients. But if we're in the normal human status, we don't want water leaking out, especially when we're already in that dehydrated state. Not to mention the fact that some of the caffeine acts as a mild diuretic, so that's not helping the cause either. And not saying that you can't have these drinks, but think about starting out your day on a positive note, starting it out where you're putting the fluid in so that maybe later when you drink a drink that may have that diuretic effect, it's only getting rid of any extra. You may have not just completely depleting and stealing from your tissues. And then sometimes these drinks that we drink thinking we're going to get energy are actually fake energy. So we're drinking the coffee, we're drinking the energy drinks, we're drinking the sodas thinking that we're going to have this huge energy boost. But I don't know if you guys have noticed, you have your coffee and yes, you have your boost, but then it has that crashing effect afterwards. And it's like a fake energy response. So then you're like, I need another cup of coffee, or I need another soda, which we already talked about. We don't have time to be drinking fluids in the first place. So constantly trying to drink the ones that are dehydrating you and causing this lull of an effect isn't exactly the best solution to the problem. So we want to keep that in mind as we're thinking about what it is that we're actually drinking. And before your shift, before you get into all the chaos, get your hydration status up before you even hit the doors, because, yes, once you're in there, you never know. So preparation for the shift is a good pointer as well. So you want to fill up the tank with high-quality fluids. So when we talk about that, we all know, I don't even have to go into this with you guys, but we all know water is the best source, best all-natural solution for getting in your intake of fluids. Drinking your water has been told and talked about from everybody under the sun, so I won't go into details of that because you guys already know to drink the water. And we already talked about doing it first thing in the morning. And so morning tiredness is actually not a lack of coffee, it's a lack of water. And so getting that water in will do good for you. So think about it. When your patient is low in energy and they aren't looking quite as peppy as maybe they used to, they have some low blood pressure, they have like that sunken in feeling, maybe they got some skin tinting, we don't run out and grab them a cup of coffee. We go, we get them IV fluids. Maybe they need a bolus of normal saline. Maybe they just need, they're dehydrated, their CVP is super low. So we know we need fluids, and that's usually the first step we do to kind of bring their situation back to a state of balance. So it should be the first thing we do for ourselves as well. And so when you think about it in that mindset, maybe it gives you a little different idea of how important the water is versus the coffee, which I know nurses love their coffee, but let's put it in perspective for a minute. You want to start the baseline of this triangle here. Get your water in. I don't care if it's water, plain water, lemon water. If you're absolutely like, I'm trying to cut off of sodas, but I just love the bubbles, then have the sparkling water. I personally love spa water, which to me just means putting all the different fruits and fun flavors into the water. And then maybe later on, if you want something else, because water does get a little boring, and sometimes you want to mix it up, then have some tea, which does have a little bit of a diuretic effect as well, but it has a lot of good benefits to it. The aloe juice, which is amazing for your digestion. Kombucha, which has the probiotics. You can mix it up. There are different healthier options out there to get a different flavor. And then, yeah, you can have alcohol and you can have coffee, but think about first hydrating your status. Then if you want the coffee and the alcohol after work, think about doing it in moderation and think about first making sure that you're hydrated before you go to these other fluids, because there is some relationship that people have just to the taste of coffee. I get it. And like we talked about before, it's just science. Every single cell of your body needs water, so why wouldn't we give them what it needs? So when we talk about drinking, and a lot of times you hear, don't drink your calories, that's going to put on weight, You hear those things. But what you should think about, too, is drinking your vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. When we give patient IV fluids, we're not giving them just water. There is normal saline, which has a sodium base to it, and there's the D5 and then stuff that has the dextrose base to it, because there is an important factor of having your electrolytes in a good place. There's lots of studies out there about how a huge percent of the population is vitamin D deficient. Stress kills our B vitamins. So thinking about what you've got going on in your life, and also thinking about the electrolytes that are in our fluid system, not just the fluid by itself. Because again, we do this for our patients. We're always giving them those fluids that have some kind of electrolytes in it. If they're really bad off and they came in as like an E2OH patient, they need that banana bag of all the nutrients and stuff. But think about for yourself. And there are many ways out there. There's many different brands and companies that have ways to do this. And when you're looking at what you want to put in your body as far as fluids that would be good for you, you want more than 5. It's what we call the golden rule of 5. More than 5 of the things you want on a package or label or ingredient list, such as electrolytes, minerals, vitamins, nutrients, fiber, those good things, is a general rule to see if that product maybe has the electrolytes and good things you need. And then the opposite side of that is the things we don't want, like the high sugars, the high additives, the saturated fats, the different things that we know not to be good for our health. You want to have less than 5 of those things. Obviously, we always go back to water being your best source of hydration, but we have to keep in consideration the electrolytes, and sometimes water just gets boring and people look for other solutions. So if you're going to look for other solutions, at least look for one that's going to help you more than it is going to harm you. So the other thing that makes it difficult for getting our hydration status under control is that it depends on how you like your beverages served. So a lot of people don't think about this. They're like, oh, I know I need to drink water. Oh, I know I need to cut back on this. Oh, I need to do this. But then actually implementing that action step is a little more complicated than they thought. Some people realize that when they drink any kind of beverage from a straw, they drink twice as much more because it's convenient just to pick the cup up and sip on the straw, and they sip twice as much than if they had to actually gulp it. I don't know what the rationale or science is behind that, but that's a personal preference. And if that's a personal preference that gets you drinking more fluids, why not set yourself up for that and get your cup with your straw? Some people also have realized, like, I don't want to drink water because it's too cold outside, and I am too cold and water's cold, so why would I put that in my body? Well, then drink warm water. It doesn't have to be coffee. It doesn't have to be tea. You can just drink some warm water. You get that effect of it warming you up, and you're still hydrating. And same thing in the summertime. It's summertime, it's so hot out, we tend to drink a little more water, but also we tend to lose a little more water because of the temperature. So you have to keep that in mind and make sure you're keeping that ratio up. And then, of course, there's always the room temperature. If you're so used to drinking wine, or you just feel fancy drinking from a wine glass, put your water in a wine glass. Who cares? Like, whatever gets the fluid in your body, whatever is your personal preference, whatever works from you, whether it's walking around with a Camelback on, which sometimes I have thought would be a brilliant idea to have at work, strapping on a Camelback to my scrubs, or even one of those, like, beer helmets that people have for drinking their beer at football games. I think that would be an awesome way for nurses to hydrate. So maybe we'll have to start that revolution. But drinking out of a mug, whatever your preference is, whatever it is that gets those fluids in, think about it, what works for you, and use that to your advantage when it comes time to getting those fluids in. All right, so what about the fact that we don't always do well at work with our hydration status? I know this. I know that I'm probably one of the worst people about this as well. When I get in that go mode, I completely forget. And so, you know, we actually need to put ourselves on a regimen of 125 cc's IV fluids every hour for 12 hours, but we know that's not always what's going to happen. And we don't want to hook ourselves up to IV because I would probably trip over the IV pole, to be honest. So what is the other solution? Sometimes I get it. It's just one of those days. But that means on the days it's not one of those days, then we need to be conscious of drinking our fluids. And definitely, if all else fails, we work 3 and 4 days a week for the most part. On your days off, you can make a conscious effort to get more hydrated, because then you're not having to take care of the lives at work. You're not having the busyness. Maybe you're busy in your outside world as well, taking care of kids and this and that. We do have more options when we're not at work. So if you think about at least definitely getting hydrated on your days off from the shift, having those water bottles around the house, having those preferred preferences, even if you're not thirsty, drinking water anyhow, having easy access, maybe carrying a water bottle in your purse, or having one in your car, doing the things that's going to give you the access to the fluids. If it's not in front of you, if it's not around you, it's very hard to drink it. So making sure that you keep up with that on your days off so that you have a better plan going towards hydration. And the reason I want to talk to you guys about this so much today is because it's such a simple thing, just like taking the deep breaths that we talked about for stress management. Such a simple thing, except always forgotten. And the same thing goes for the fluid intake. And so we want to just bring this to our forefront and to our front of our minds and really pay attention to what we are doing with the simple things, and then we will advance on to the more complicated things. Let's get the basics down first. Are we taking those good deep breaths? Are we, having a fluid status? Because if you think about it, this is what we're doing with our patients. First, I need to know, is my patient breathing? Yep, okay, they're breathing. Great. Are they breathing adequately? Maybe not. Maybe they could use a little oxygen. And then second thing I want to look at, what's their fluid status? Do they have enough fluid status going on? What's their blood pressure? How are they peeing? These are the things we do with our patients every single time we're dealing with them and assessing them. And so we need to do that for ourselves before we move on to any more advanced techniques of things. We need to get back to the basics and make sure we're taking care of these things. So that's all I have for you guys today on fluid status. I hope that you guys will get hydrated and take care of your heart, your kidneys, and your energy levels by getting that adequate fluid in. Again, if you want to, you can follow me on any of the social media sites at uheartlife. Any questions, comments, concerns, you can always email me at uheartlife@gmail.com. And once again, thanks Aya Healthcare for letting me present this to you guys, because you are my people, and I love presenting to the nurses and the healthcare professionals. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Shannon, and thanks to everyone who joined. You will get a reminder email after this. Don't forget to sign up for the rest of the sessions that work for you and to join our wellness group on Facebook if you haven't already. Have a great day and holiday if we don't see you on here tomorrow. And thank you again. Have a great one.